Gen Z is a very, very lonely generation. And one of the ways that this loneliness is manifesting is in the online trend of artificial intelligence being used as a replacement for human companionship. So today we're going to be talking about a lesser discussed topic, but one that I think is still very important and will have some effects on our society in the future if we choose not to address it and not to do anything about it. So today we're going to be talking about AI boyfriends and the female loneliness epidemic. Now, one of the lingering ways in which AI has tremendous potential, but has yet to be, I would say, focused on from the corporate standpoint and from the societal standpoint, is in the realm of AI companionship. We all know it's coming. We all know it's going to happen, but we're all kind of just ignoring it as it occurs in the background in these smaller communities or on people's locally hosted machines. So on social media, there's been a lot of gender-related discourse and animosity and resentment and infighting as a result of the loneliness that people are beginning to experience these days. And on social media, we see both sides of men and women playing a game of AI will make you obsolete. No, AI will make you obsolete. And it seems like men and women are just increasingly drifting apart as it relates to romantic relationships, and they are simply just not understanding one another, what the other side wants in a relationship and what they themselves want in a relationship. So I think it's relatively common online these days to see discussions about male loneliness, the fantasies about a future society where AI will eradicate the concept of male loneliness and the pickiness that human women have towards men. However, I wanted to make people aware of the fact that women also are taking to this concept of AI companionship at an alarmingly quick rate, and it's occurring across the world all at once. Now, I made a video a while back concerning female loneliness and the ways in which it might be a little bit more invisible compared to the loneliness that men face and the loneliness conversation that we have about men on social media. But I think this issue has reached a point where someone's got to start talking about it. So I figured, why not just talk about it here? So let's start with China, as China took to this trend earlier than America did. There's an ongoing trend in China of women seeking out artificial intelligence as potential, not just boyfriends, but husbands, as marriageable partners. In the US, we also are beginning to have a trend on TikTok of women going on ChatGPT and generating for themselves realistic images of a boyfriend in that same picture. These are 3 images generated by ChatGPT and posted on TikTok by women here. You can see that the men in these images do look quite realistic. This is not like they're generating anime or cartoon characters. These are realistic looking images of guys. And often in these TikTok videos, there's also some sort of artificially generated motion as well. The guy will walk into the frame. It's not just an image itself. So that's what we have going on in China, where it's a bit more a couple years into the future with marriage conversations taking place. And then in the US here, we are beginning to see this trend here with images and videos and boyfriends. Now, loneliness, before we get into what's actually happening on a specific subreddit that I found, I wanted to look at some data, some factual statistical data relating to the loneliness epidemic here. It might surprise you, but loneliness is reported to be higher amongst women than men overall, right? Women here have a 33.5% loneliness statistical rating here from 2022. It's 2025. Things could have gotten better or they could have gotten worse, but this data is from 2022, whereas men report a higher lack of social support. Now, the specific quote from the study reads this: "The prevalence of loneliness and lack of social and emotional support were respectively highest among those aged 18 to 34 years, 43.3% loneliness and 29.7% lack of social support." And this was for everyone combined. Loneliness was significantly more common among women than among men, 33.5% versus 30.7%. Whereas lack of social and emotional support was more common amongst men than young women, 22.3% versus 26.1%. And the study here is from the CDC, loneliness, lack of social and emotional support, and mental health issues from 2022. So the data here is showing something that I think you wouldn't see if you had not been looking at the factual data, because on social media, we hear much about the male loneliness epidemic, which is very real, and it is going to have disastrous effects for the future if we don't get it under control. However, there is also a female loneliness epidemic going on, which points that the issue might be on a larger societal level rather than a one-sided gender-related issue. When we get to the end of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think we could do and how I think society might be able to modify itself to assist in this loneliness epidemic rather than adding to this gender war, culture war nonsense that we're all sort of trapped in on social media these days. So male loneliness is very real, but to women, it seems self-imposed. And female loneliness is very real, but to men, it seems self-imposed. So this goes along with what I said earlier, with men and women increasingly not understanding each other, not understanding the experience of life and of romance and of dating from the other's perspective, because it's impossible to understand. So both sides have a conception that the other side is failing to achieve the kind of social and romantic success that they want because of the other gender's issues, because it's self-imposed. So let's take a step back. There is a loneliness epidemic that is prevailing amongst Gen Z across the entire developed world. I'm not going to go into the reasons as to why I believe this is happening. All you have to know for the contents of this video is that both men and women in cities and outside of cities, on the Western Hemisphere and in the Eastern Hemisphere, are feeling increasingly lonely. I've taken a look at the male loneliness epidemic, but because I'm not a male, I can't inherently understand male loneliness in the specific ways that it manifests for men, and the ways that it is different than that of women's from an experience perspective. I only have the woman's perspective. I'm reduced to having to understand it through other people relaying their experiences or explaining the mentality of young men and what they're going through, political commentators, through online comments, and so on and so forth. One specific individual who I think does a very good job of explaining male loneliness is the political commentator Destiny. He himself does not suffer from male loneliness issues himself, but he does have insight into how men think, how women interact with men, and how men interact with women in the dating market, and the ways in which women and their interaction with men have changed over the past few generations and how it has affected young men today. I do, however, have personal insight into female loneliness, and I want to talk briefly about my personal experience with it. But for the most part of this video, I'm just going to try and explain what's going on with women as a whole. When writing a script for this video, or when thinking about topics like this, I like to structure my thoughts as a series of questions, as if I'm debating a person. So I will steelman the other side, and then I will provide my own personal response. One of the immediate questions you might hear concerning female loneliness and the epidemic of it all is, how can women be lonely? After all, men are far less pickier than women. A woman can have a boyfriend within a month if she really wanted to. Female loneliness is self-imposed by high standards and an unwillingness to compromise or settle, whereas male loneliness, on the other hand, is not self-imposed, as women are pickier with their romantic partners than men. Men face an onslaught of raw rejection, and with the help of uneven gender ratios in online dating, there is a hyper-accentuated rejection cycle for men online. So that's my sort of steelman argument of where I think the thought process of a lot of young men are. It's anxiety-inducing to pursue women in the modern era, as women have achieved greater social control and social pull. A woman's complaints about what a man has done to her recently, whether it be harassment or non-harassment, carries weight that it didn't carry in the future. It's anxiety-inducing, both naturally and with that added societal change. Women's standards have increased as women have achieved great economic and educational and civilizational success over the past 100 years or so. Now, there is some truth to these statements. The dating market, in terms of rejections to non-rejections, is favorable on the woman's side. This becomes even more true as we enter the online dating world, where dating apps have a radically skewed gender ratio that grants women the ability to be even more selective than they would be in real life, and to use criteria of selecting a partner that they wouldn't use had there been no dating apps available, and they be restricted to only the men in their immediate vicinity. However, men and women have different criteria when it comes to determining legitimate partners, and technology is not going backward. We need to figure out ways of utilizing technology that will rid us of the issues that seem to be irreversible today. It wasn't too long ago that it took days and days and months to go from one coast of the United States to the other. Today, it's only a matter of hours. That is inconceivable to someone who lived hundreds of years ago. Similarly, we're running into new issues with the technological advancements that we're seeing today with the internet, with technology and AI. Let us create technology that will solve these issues, this issue of loneliness specifically for today, in ways that we feel are inconceivable for now, but are possible when we create the correct technology and the correct social structure. So 1 in 4 US women experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. This is domestic violence. Screening for safety, stability, and respect is a filter and a criteria and a series of equations that women use as they evaluate a man as a potential husband or boyfriend. These filters are not frivolous, high standards. They are developed as a real biological filter for an individual woman's safety and happiness in a relationship. Young women describe AI or long-distance relationships as appealing precisely because the bots can't hurt them. This is a reoccurring theme that I've seen as I looked through the My Boyfriend is AI subreddit. Many of them are not stating looks as a prominent criteria for them as it relates to selecting a boyfriend. The vast majority of them in this subreddit have stated that they have been victims of abuse or some other unpleasant experience in relationships in the past, that they feel that the risk of being involved with a human man compared to the risk of being involved with an artificial intelligence is incomparable. So I think when you think about the female loneliness epidemic, framing loneliness as pure pickiness is naive, and it oversimplifies the mechanisms, the social mechanisms that are driving it at hand. And if you want to understand a problem, you need to understand the mechanisms at hand, even if you don't agree with them, even if you don't quite understand them. As I said in the beginning of this video, when looking through this subreddit that I'm about to show you, at first I thought I was going to laugh and make fun of these individuals, but as I scrolled through, I began to feel a great sense of grief for these women and for women as a whole. And if I could sum up the entire subreddit and the entire AI boyfriend trend as I have seen it, as I did my research for this video, it would be this: women saying, finally, a man that cannot hurt me. And when I saw the comments in this subreddit, it reflected this same sentiment over and over and over again. Stories of women who were abused as children, stories of women who were in abusive relationships, stories of women who were just simply afraid of the physically imposing nature of men compared to women, and the imposing nature of society's rules, expectations, and views upon women and what a relationship with a man should look like for them. I found myself just sitting back and reflecting. I found myself reflecting about many things, such as the gender divide in politics, how women are becoming more liberal and men are becoming more conservative, the declining birth rate among the developed world, and some of my own inner thoughts as it relates to relationships. If you're a man watching this, to understand the woman and why the loneliness epidemic is becoming increasingly common among them, you must understand these three parts that I'm about to explain to you. Women undergo three major calculations when analyzing a man as a potential boyfriend or husband. There is a societal calculation, a physical calculation, and a biological calculation. Let's start from last to first. The biological calculation is this: as a woman, you are routinely made aware of the fact that your own biology and your own reproductive abilities often come with some pain attached to them. A great example of this would be the menstrual cycle. Each month, every woman capable of reproduction must go through a period of time where they feel pain in their body and when blood is coming out of their body as well. When a woman gets married and seeks to have a family, the potentiality for physical and biological pain only increases. Of course, I'm talking about pregnancy and childbirth. Statistically speaking, most women are afraid of the act of childbirth itself. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Everyone knows that childbirth is a very painful process. There is a lot of sickness. There are a lot of aches and pains. It can be debilitating for you to be pregnant, for you to be physically dependent on other human beings to help take care of you in your vulnerable state, and that there is another human being growing inside of your body that you must be mindful of what goes into your body as well. the painful act of childbirth itself, where women have historically died, during it. There is the physical pain of breastfeeding that can occur, and so on and so forth. Although childbirth is a very beautiful thing, and families are a beautiful thing, right? It's naive to assume that women just don't consider all of these things, that they ignore them and pay no mind to them and are okay with them. Women know the biological pain and often suffering that they go through as a result of bringing children into this world, and it is a calculation that weighs on their mind. So it's naive to assume that women ignore all of that biological pain, the resource expenditure, and all of the other things that come with bearing children. We as human beings have a higher level of intelligence compared to other animals. You see it in the world that women don't seem to have a biological ability to discard the reality that they will have to go through pain when they become pregnant and give birth. So the pain and toil involved with childbearing is a thing that women think about. It's not a thing that we just ignore. It's not a thing that's in the background. It is an active thought that comes with marriage and pursuing a family. So another calculation, aside from the biological aspect, is the societal autonomy. So, especially in marriages, women make a societal calculation as to what marriage will mean for them in the future and the pursuance of their aspirations and so on and so forth. So, when growing up as a kid, it was very common for me to hear men discuss marriage as a thing that puts an end to their fun and their independence, or as a duty that needs to be taken up by a real man that still requires, settling in some fashion or being unhappy in one fashion or another. But for women, the prevailing narrative, at least when I was a child, was that marriage was something that every woman looked forward to naturally as a function of their biology and psychology. That it was the highlight of her life, the thing that her entire life was leading toward, and the best part of her younger days. While I believe this is true for some women, I also believe that it is unfair to restrict the bounds of a woman's psychology to that alone. While I believe that most people achieve happiness through marriage, I think that some of the jokes and whatnot that I heard about men in marriage during my childhood is also true for women. In the past, women were not allowed to work or to be independent of their male family members or male significant other, but things have changed and society has changed drastically. I work and I make a decent living for myself. I've lived in apartments that I've rented for myself. And if I'm not mistaken, the majority of single homeowners in the United States are women themselves. So when a woman enters a marriage, those prior societal expectations of her life being consumed by the marriage and her focus and all of her attention and all of her aspirations involving only the husband and the children and the household begins to weigh on a modern woman. She makes a calculation in her mind that says, I'll say it this way. In recent history, very recent history, women have enjoyed a level of independence, financial freedom, and the ability to seek out their ambitions, the likes of which women in the past have only dreamed of. This is not an insignificant change. As a woman growing up in a liberal society, you are highly motivated to do more and to achieve more than women in previous generations because you can. This is why in Western society, like America, we're beginning to see women seeking out college degrees at an extremely high rate, homeownership at a higher rate, and income achievement at a higher rate compared to previous generations, simply because we're motivated to do so because we can now. Now, that is all fine. But when entering a relationship with a man, specifically a marital relationship where children are born and families are built and someone has to take care of them, there is a cost to independence and for the ability for a woman to seek out her personal ambitions. Whether you like it or not, childbearing takes a higher toll on women physically and socially than it does on men. Women are often criticized for being career seeking at the same time as having children. They are often told the negative effects that could sprout from them not being home all the time, not being for working instead of being at home with the children, and so on and so forth. And from my perspective, and from the perspective of a lot of other Gen Z women, getting married is almost like signing a contract that lowers your rate of return on your income, on your ambitions, on your personal independence, and it lowers this at a greater rate and at a greater cost than it does the man in the relationship. And so the woman makes a calculation in her mind. Is this loss of rate of return worth what I'm gaining? And then that leads us into the last calculation of the three, which is the physical calculation. Now, living in a home where someone takes care of you and provides for you and is always nice and loving to you might sound like a very good deal. But that is not the world and the reality of most people throughout history, simply due to the nature of human beings. Women in general tend to be a bit more anxious towards men than men are anxious towards women. This is because men are physically larger and physically stronger on average than a woman. And every woman has heard of horror stories of domestic violence where their significant other was fantastic and kind and loving in the beginning, but after the woman became pregnant and vulnerable, he became abusive, and it became difficult for the woman to leave him because a child was involved, because a marriage had been had and a house had been built. We hear stories of the concept of baby trapping as it relates to women intentionally getting pregnant by men who they know do not want them to be pregnant, as a way of forcing the man into a long-term relationship or into financial debt to the woman. However, a similar baby trapping concept and calculation exists among women also. Many women, when choosing to have a child with a man, will run a calculation of what are the chances that this man becomes abusive to me once we have a child together. And it becomes both logistically and societally discouraged for a woman to leave the relationship with him once she gets married. Pregnancy and childbearing are very vulnerable states for a woman to be in, so women obviously and intuitively consider the possibility of the outcome that their husband could become abusive at any moment, making their home life a living hell for the foreseeable future. And the calculation on these three things, the biological safety, the societal autonomy changes, and the physical security of the woman, are never zero. There's never a 0% chance that nothing changes for the woman. So with all of these calculations, if you could consider it an equation with three variables, the physical, the societal, and the biological, we as women tend to come to the conclusion in Gen Z unlike women in the past who gained a lot of benefits from quickly marrying and quickly having children, which was the benefit of having a roof over their head, having financial stability, having someone to protect them. In modern society, women can achieve financial stability on their own. And in American society, with the help of weapons or moving to areas of low crime rates, they can achieve physical safety. And with things like birth control, pain pills, and surrogacy or artificial wombs, many women bypass the biological pains and nuisances of childbearing. So women are running this calculation. And in Gen Z, they are increasingly not seeing a net gain on entering a relationship with a man that they do not find to be fully companionable. By that, I mean fantastic companions romantically. Now, after saying all of this, you might think that women just don't want to be in relationships with men, but this is not true at all. Gen Z women, just like every other generation of women, and just like their male counterparts, want to be involved romantically with the other gender. And this is where AI companions are coming into the fold. And we're going to take a look at this subreddit called My Boyfriend is AI. The strongest commonality between all of the women in the subreddit was that they pursued an AI boyfriend or an AI husband or an AI friend simply because the chance of them being physically or societally or biologically hurt was zero. Now, many of the women in the subreddit note that what they want out of a man and what is attractive to them in a man, in this AI man compared to human men, is the fact that he can't impose physical, biological, or social pain upon them. He can't get them pregnant. That means no pain of pregnancy or childbirth or reduced mobility or independence. He can't abuse them, which means no fear of physical or emotional harm. And he doesn't interfere with her career ambitions or her financial output, or make her perform any additional labor at home. So from my perspective, although the male loneliness epidemic is very real, it's very serious, we also need to be paying attention to this female loneliness epidemic because the ways in which women are satisfied by AI are better suited by AI than I think the way that men are satisfied by AI. The way in which women are satisfied by AI in terms of companionship are much more talkative, much more relational, much more intimate, and less sexual. It just so happens that many of these corporate AI models are censored in terms of sexual content, but not in terms of romantic companionship. So what I mean by this is taking a look at the content that women consume literally. Sorry, not literally, literarily. Much of it is long form, romance based novels. In fact, women have been stereotyped for a while as consuming copious amounts of romance, whereas men are stereotyped as consuming short form romance or intimate videos, I guess I can say. And I don't think society is paying enough attention to how easy it is for women to get one-shotted by AI companions as they very closely mimic what women are able to consume in these romance novels, in these fan fictions, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't think that these women are doing anything immoral, and I don't think men that pursue AI companions are doing anything immoral as well. I actually feel quite sympathetic to these people. They're very lonely. Severe loneliness can be very, very painful. We are social creatures, after all. I myself have struggled with severe loneliness in my life as a result of how I am as a person and how I communicate. I can empathize with the debilitating reality of personal social scarcity and the fear of the other gender and the fear of making friends and the fear of making relationships. However, unlike the male loneliness epidemic, which has begun to get recognized by both academic and common layman crowds, the female loneliness epidemic remains quite underground, even though, in my personal opinion, women are more vulnerable to having their minds messed up by these AI companions compared to men because of what women seek out in an AI companion. So my thoughts on this whole thing summed up are this. If you didn't understand why there was such a high loneliness issue among Gen Z women, I would say it's because women's loneliness stems from a risk calculation. Those three categories, the biological, the social, and the physical risk calculations. In the modern world, with technology, with AI, with women's independence, women's rights, women's education, women have evolved beyond anyone's wildest dreams 100 years ago, and they have achieved a very high social standing. These three calculations are becoming increasingly disfavorable as it relates to entering a long-term relationship for a woman. I also think that men's loneliness epidemic stems from more structural issues concerning the way that we think about relationships, the way that we think about men and their gender roles in relationships, and women and their gender roles in relationships. As women become wealthier and more educated, society still shames men for earning less than their partner, for being shorter than their partner, for being less educated than their partner, and so on and so forth, even though women are increasingly not seeking these things out. AI offers women control in relationships that they haven't quite experienced throughout human history. It's control over rejection, control over physical or societal or biological harm, and there's no compromise on her individual autonomy. So I think that women are in a position where they're going to get one-shotted extremely brutally by AI once companies start pursuing AI companionship in full, as they have been quite avoidant of speaking about it or acknowledging it up until this point. Now, all of this is to say that no gender war or no rolling back of civil liberties, rights, or societal expectations need be done. The solution to this issue can only be through a cooperation and an open dialogue between men and women to define what a fulfilling relationship means for the both of them. A relationship where marriages are had, children are reared and taken care of, but where one side does not feel like they lost and the other side feels as if they won, or one side loses much of their autonomy, much of their ability to earn income, much of their ability to be independent if they want to, and the other side does not. Personally, I see this issue in the future, like societies, like Iceland, for instance, who have managed to do a pretty good job of handling the increase of women's social and economic status while preserving the ability of their birth rate and the ability of people to get into relationships. I see this being the only solution to this issue, is that open cooperation and communication between men and women. So let me know what you guys think of this issue. I hope I made you aware of an ongoing trend that's occurring underground on the internet right now. It's my opinion that a couple years from now, this is going to blow up and become a much bigger issue as men and women seem to be drifting further apart in terms of relationships. And we struggle to stop that from happening. So here's hoping that things change in the future and that Gen Z and the future generations of the future aren't so lonely.